Hello and welcome to episode 31 of AARGH Optics, a podcast where grown adults discuss, overanalyze, and generally take a toy media franchise originally intended for kids a little too seriously. Increasingly, not that of Transformers. I am your modern toy-weary host, Orion Ghia, more and more going by my day-to-day nickname of Sleeves these days. And with me is my largely clueless in regards to the topic I've selected today, on account of him being 15 years my junior, co-host, Virtual Dave. How's it going, Dave?
Hello everyone. Yeah, it's going good. Yeah.
Excellent. So, I think I mentioned in our last episode that I've not been feeling Transformers as much recently. And to be fair, the current state of the toy industry, full stop, to be honest. So, as a healthy distraction, I've been going vintage of late and dabbling in, more vintage toys. I've dabbled in vintage Transformers over the years, so I fancied something different. So, I've been getting into Starcom recently. So, Dave, what did you know of Starcom before I ever mentioned it to you?
Nothing. I think it's pretty fair to say, even though you mentioned it, of our age difference, I'm pretty clued in on a lot of 80s franchises, toy lines that were around before me. And Starcom is one that I've never heard of before.
Yeah. It's weird, really, because it was around, it was present, I remember it being around, I remember other kids having it. So the idea that it's kind of been largely forgotten is sort of crazy to me.
I mean, especially so as I understand it now, is that it was quite popular here.
Yeah.
Which is not even like one of those things that got lost to time in America, like, because they had so many different things going on. But I mean, one of the few toy lines we had here and went on for a while, I don't think I even know anyone who had it or seen it in someone's bin of old toys or anything.
Yeah, it was much more popular here than it was in America and lasted a lot longer as a result. So, what do you know it to be now? Please describe, after your many hours of research, describe to us what Starcom is, and then I'll fill in the gaps.
Well, I mean, what do you mean, toy-wise or story-wise?
Both, either.
Okay. From what I understand of the story, which by the cartoon is not a lot, some point in the future, human beings have ventured off to other planets to some various degree of setting up bases and outposts around said planets, and there is some sort of elite force called Starcom who kind of patrol, protect, and survey these science missions on these planets. Mm-hmm. And then there are these other chaps called what are they called?
Shadow Force,
who are very unclear about what they actually want, except for just stealing things from Starcom or just dicking about with their technology now and then.
Yeah.
And we're like, we'll take that and we'll apply it to our things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really get what they want.
Yeah, we'll get into that when we talk about the cartoon. Yeah.
But they're there, and there is a battle that ensues between the two forces over technology and resources, and the 80s shtick of cartoons. Mm-hmm. That's what I understand cartoon-wise. Toy-wise, it seems to be a very, maybe it's not unique, but it's a very interesting play pattern that the toys really push about not needing batteries for all the gimmicks and the things that operate. It's all motorized, it's use of magnets. Quite clever stuff, really, when I looked into it. Mm-hmm. The play pattern is quite self-explanatory. You don't need to get your mum to also buy a pack of batteries for the 10 different toys that the line would require, like in other things. It just seemed like, trying to get kids into space and spaceships, I suppose.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was kind of designed that way, because, I mean, it was made by a toy company called Coleco, mm-hmm. In conjunction with NASA's Young Astronauts Council.
Which is so strange. Like, they're so
So it was supposed to like encourage kids to get into space exploration, to get into the space program, and so on. Which obviously in the 80s was a big thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'll fill in the rest of the background then, because like Starcom was quite a short-lived toy line, near future sci-fi kind of toy line, and Coleco kind of started it, and then Coleco kind of got in trouble, which I can go over later. But eventually, essentially, Coleco folded.
Okay. Within the short time the toy line was around.
Yes, pretty much. So Mattel took over the license for a while, but they basically stopped selling the toys in the US, and they just sold them overseas for a long time. So the US line was quite almost as short-lived as the cartoon was, which was only a 13-episode thing. Like, I think the US only got like the first couple of waves of toys, and then we had like another 2 or 3 waves after that, overseas, in Europe, in the UK, in Canada, and all sorts of places. So yeah, it was short-lived. It kind of centered around motorized vehicles and playsets and 2-inch action figures. Well, slightly larger than 2-inch, but yeah, 2.5-inch, something like that. And the main gimmicks being power deploy, which were usually involved vehicles having automatic transformation features triggered by a clockwork motor or something, or a button that would make something spring out or move or expand. No batteries required for any of those. There are no batteries in the entire line, as far as I'm aware. I don't think there is. And Magnalock, which utilise magnets often, but not exclusively, on the soles of the figure's boots. And there's metal plates all over the figures and playsets that they can stick to. And in some cases, the magnets in the guy's boots will set off power deploy features.
Yes. It seems like a very gimmicky base toy line, which really works because, as far as I understand it, not all of this stuff, a lot of this stuff was sold separately. So even if you had bits and bobs from different ships or whatever, they all kind of were interactive with one another. You didn't necessarily need to have the big spaceships to make the little spaceships work or whatever. You could have had any sort of configuration of toys.
It all works together. It all works in tandem. It's a lot like Diaclone in that way.
Yeah, something I always hear.
And Microman, very similar to those kind of lines where they're all everything kind of works together and is interchangeable and kind of like fits, can work with another toy, if you know what I mean. It's all kind of joined together. But yeah, you're right. It was accompanied by a TV show, short-lived, 13-episode TV show, and it was developed with the Young Astronauts Council.
It's so weird. It's so like you would have thought that the cartoon would have been more kidsy, but it felt like if I wasn't at home this week being ill, I don't know if I could have made it all the way through the cartoon because it was so not. It didn't draw me in as like other cartoons from that era.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It hasn't got that instant kind of excitement that other, I'm gonna say, dumber toy lines and TV shows had.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I think the thing is animated really well. Like the budget was clearly there for the animation. It's just the stories were very like science based and very like, well, it's not really about, none of it is really about the war. It's more about just they're going to do something and explore somewhere, and by hijinks the bad guys are there.
Yeah.
My optics!
Well, let's get on to the show itself in a minute, but let's just talk about its production. Do you know who was the series creator?
I don't remember the name, but yes.
Brynne Stevens, who is known for her work on Gargoyles, Spider-Man, the animated series, Batman, the animated series, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, He-Man, Masters of the Universe, and Transformers. She wrote 3 episodes of Beast Machines, I believe.
I hear that isn't like all. There was quite the people behind it or the production. There was a lot of names that kind of like were attached to a lot of those type of cartoons around the time, and a lot of people from this went on to do like really cool projects that are really well known. So it's just very odd.
I mean, there's only 13 episodes, but of those 13 episodes, one's written by Dave Wise, who wrote episodes of Masters of the Universe, episodes of Defenders of the Earth, episodes of Batman the Animated Series, and 193 episodes of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Wow.
And 15 episodes of Season 2 of Transformers.
Oh.
Including episodes like War Dawn, which are highly thought of, because it's like, Optimus Prime is his origin story, as it were. The Orion Pax stuff, Like, so him, and then only bloody Marv Wolfman. All right, you're looking at me like you don't know who Marv Wolfman is.
It's not a name I recognise. I recognise the other two.
Jesus Christ.
Go on, explain it to me. Maybe I do know. Maybe I still don't know about name.
He's like a massively well-known and important comic book writer.
That's probably why I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. You have plastic figures of characters he created.
Well, I'm very thankful.
Yeah, and you just don't know who the hell he is. He worked for Marvel and DC.
Okay.
Probably most famous for co-creating characters like, I've got a list here, Blade,
Ooh.
Cyborg, Raven, Starfire, Deathstroke, Tim Drake, Nova, Black Cat, Bullseye. You've heard of these people, haven't you?
Yeah, one or two, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. He made the new Teen Titans. He was kind of like in charge. I think he wrote, I know he wrote Crisis on Infinite Earths, which is like a big comic book event. He wrote the whole thing, and he's still writing. Is he still writing today? I'm not sure. I'll have to look that up. He could be dead. I hope not.
Well, okay.
Thankfully, at the time of recording, Marv Wolfman is alive and still working. Over his long career, he has worked for Marvel, DC, Disney, and, incredibly remiss of me not to mention on this podcast, Transformers. Yes, he was a story editor on Season 3 of the Transformers and co-wrote 2 episodes of that season, and both helped develop the original story outline for Transformers Beast Machines and wrote 4 episodes of Beast Machines. He's a Roddy legend. Yeah, he's a big deal. Big deal. Like
that's what I mean. Like I did look at this and I saw that there were some of these names that were attached to a whole bunch of other things. It was just like, it's just weird the people who were behind this.
Yeah.
And how I just wasn't as drawn into the products.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Let's. I mean, it's produced by Deke Animation,
of course,
who produced plenty of other well-known, big, important, very successful cartoon series.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, shall we talk about the show then?
Mm-hmm.
What are your? So you were kind of saying, you were already saying before your general thoughts about the show was it didn't really draw you in.
Yeah, I think it was just because there wasn't, like the first episode in particular, it's thrown straight in like you should already know who these people are. Like, there's not really like a pilot episode where you get an explanation of when and where this is happening, why this is happening, is Earth still a thing? You know, I don't really understand the world of this place.
Yeah.
And it kind of just expects you to know it.
It does, and it doesn't even introduce the characters. I mean, you know how shows like Transformers or G.I. Joe or, I don't know, Thundercats or whatever, almost to an annoying degree, constantly name-check each other, constantly say, oh, Lion-O, it's you! You know? Oh, yeah. Optimus Prime! You know, like, this... they hardly say each other's names at all. Like, I don't know who half of these people are. I've watched all 13 episodes, and I'm like, I think that guy is called Crowbar? Paul Crowbar Corbin? That's him?
Yeah.
That one's John Slim Griffin. But, like, I you know, like, you don't really... The main characters are 3 colonels in Starcom. And then you've got the baddies, which is Emperor Dark, and his minions who don't seem very loyal to him.
I mean, I think that's one of the worst things about this show. Like, I can kind of almost forgive the whole good guys, because there's only 3 of them, and they do appear in every episode. You kind of get to understand them as they go. But the bad guy, Emperor Dark, he doesn't do anything.
Well, I suppose there was meant to be more of it. Like, there was only 13 episodes. I suppose eventually he was meant to achieve something.
Yeah, but I mean, like, not even a sense of like, he doesn't really punish the bad guys when they fail or anything. He's like, what do you think your punishment should be? Like, how should I? Oh, okay, maybe I'll do it off screen later. Or, he doesn't really even scold his lackeys or anything. Like, he doesn't do anything.
No, I mean, there's lots of stuff. There's lots of ideas in there that are introduced then discarded.
Yeah,
like, it seems at some point that Emperor Dark is working on some kind of big project.
Yes, yeah.
And that he's planning to... I mean, it is kind of... I think it's in the intro, or at some point, he does say that he wants to destroy Starcom and become, like, Earth's all-powerful ruler. And it looks like there's an episode where they find a hidden city under the surface of Mars. All of this happens in our solar system. It's very grounded in our solar system. And they find this hidden city, and it's meant to have been built by the creators or something. I think that's what they're called.
Right.
And Dark seems to have some of their technology, and I think he's doing something with it.
Right. Okay.
But it never really seems... I mean, whether they were going to go back to that later, I don't know. But yeah, all the episodes are very one and done. They don't really have a through line, and ideas are kind of thrown in there and then discarded for the next one, and we've forgotten about that. I mean, I suppose, like a lot of things at the time, it was episodic. It wasn't meant to all hold together. You weren't meant to watch them in order,
Yeah, I mean, just like in say like I forget her name now, but there's a bad guy, the female bad guy with the flat top.
Malvana Wild.
Malvana, of course, that's her name.
Or Malvana Wild, I think. Malvana.
See, I think she was probably one of the most interesting on the bad guy side.
What, not Major Romac?
No.
No?
I mean, I just, because it's not very often that you get, from what I remember, maybe there's a lot more, because I haven't seen, obviously, every 80s cartoon, but there's not many female bad guys who are also quite high up in the bad guy region. I mean, you've got, like, Baroness and... I can't even think of any other. There's not a lot who are that type of spot.
There's Zerara, or whatever her name is, in...
yeah.
Joe.
Yeah.
There's Evil Lynn. There's... I'm just disproving you.
No.
There's...
But
there's usually one. There's usually one.
There's usually one. But
there's one here.
With there's such a small series, there seems to be a lot of... Even on the good guys side, there's a lot of women in this show, which is a good thing. It's like, it's really... It's not... Because normally when I think of 80s cartoons, I think of just men with big muscles, with either a big sword or a big gun. But there is like a lot of diversity in the show.
Well, this is the thing. This show is more grounded and in a way, a bit more intelligent than those shows.
Yes.
Like it tries to use kind of proper kind of space tech. It tries to be realistic.
I did find
which I think is a bit of a turn off for kids who just want to watch things blowing up and crazy characters.
Because I think that I got that from the first episode when they were like coming to save that space station that had been what would you call it, lassoed by a big floating jellyfish whale.
It was a Nantucket sleigh ride. That's what it was.
There we go.
Yeah, it was a research station. Yeah, the first episode, they're on. Is it Jupiter? I think
something like that.
And they're researching space whales, which look like jellyfish, and they get attacked by a little drone, and then they lasso one of these space whales to get away, but then they're running out of air.
I was going to say, like, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of running out of air, we're running out of fuel. We only have a short amount of time to get to A to B, or we can't save this person. I'm like, it's like that was the bit that was like, oh, they're really trying to push the realism, because that's not something they ever really come up with. Like maybe not Transformers, but like something like Masters of the Universe or something. They go to another place. They're not worrying about the oxygen level. They're just no helmets. It's very much that, like, several times they're stranded somewhere and they need fuel, and someone's got to bring them fuel from somewhere else. Which is
tying into the Toyline.
Yeah.
Although I don't think the TV show does a great job of tying into the Toyline.
No.
Because it doesn't... I mean, it barely features the toys. Like, it does, but they're not as heavily in it as much as you'd want to, and they rarely focus on the abilities or gimmicks of the toys. Like, they'll say, oh, we need to power deploy, or they'll use Magnalock, but they won't really make a big deal out of it. And I mean, I don't think you see a pair of Magnalock boots being used until episode 7.
Very possibly, yeah.
And it's like, that's on all the toys. And I think we see most of, like, the first wave of toys, so you do get them. But I mean, you see some of them so fleetingly that you wouldn't. You'd probably miss them. Like, you wouldn't. You'd be like, oh, I don't know. Oh, what is that in the show? Oh, yes, it is. Yeah. It was in episode 6 for about 15 seconds.
But that's what I mean. Like, it's so maybe too based stuck in the reality bit that it doesn't really flourish like the others, because there's none of that, toyification or splashing of fantasy in there when those things happen. There's not even like a really big music cue for these things. There's not a...
Well, no. I mean, the music is a bit rubbish in general. I mean, the intro's not great. It doesn't catch your attention. It's got great animation, but it's not got great music.
Yes.
I like the intro animation-wise, but yeah, the music is just kind of very kind of generically militaristic. And and then some of the music sounds like it's been borrowed off of Ghostbusters.
I was going to say this, yeah. It feels very Ghostbusters in a lot of the episodes. I don't know what it is about even the characters as well. They kind of feel...
Well, it's not surprising. It's written by the same guys who wrote Ghostbusters.
Well, but this is what I'm trying to figure out from the whole thing, because all the elements are there. Like, it's not a huge cast. It's quite small cast of characters. They are kind of like that kind of Ghostbusters, early team, 3 people. They're going back and forth. They have their nice jokes about their day-to-day, playing cards, making up rules as they go, all the things that they do. But it just doesn't...
They don't really have characters. Like, they're very, very 2D in that... So the main characters are... right, here we go. Tell me something about Colonel Derringer. Colonel James Derringer. What characterizes him?
He has a lot of off-the-wall ideas.
They all do.
No, but he's the one who's always like, I've got a plan. And never tells anybody.
All say it in every episode.
He has a mum and a sister who works at a space station.
Who you only see in the first episode. He has a cat.
He has a cat. Do we actually see the cat in the show? I can't remember.
Yes, I think once or twice, but not very often. So then, and how about John Slim Griffin?
He has children that he leaves on Mars with.
I think they're his nieces and nephews, aren't they? I think.
Oh, okay. There is a niece and a nephew, who just like, yeah.
Well, they probably live with their parents. They're not just left there on their own. I think that's acceptable. But yeah, I mean, his main characteristic is he's by the book.
He's very that was the thing. He's very. I think they really try and push it in one episode. Like, he's very much like, you got to do it by the rules until you're at death's door, and it's like, oh, I guess we could bend the rules a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that's his main characteristic. And then you've got Colonel Paul Crowbar Corbin?
I mean, I liked him. He's probably like the more laid back of the team. He's the science guy. He's the guy who they were getting to fix things or to.
Yeah, it's odd, isn't it? Because like he's not. Yeah, I suppose he's the science guy. He's the engineer.
The engineer, yeah, that's probably better.
But he's also the biggest jerk.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I did like the episode where there's that. They need to transport a child who's really smart, and also a thing that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
And they sit down and they have a little chat about being the smart one. I kind of did like that.
Best episode, in my opinion.
Really?
Best episode. And written by Dennis Wise.
Okay.
It's called Flash Malkovich Space Cadet. And it has opens with a kid kind of reading Starcom comics.
Yeah.
And playing with Starcom toys. It's like, finally, you're selling the toys. And he's like, he's kind of a genius, but he's kind of picked on by his fellow cadets. He ends up kind of like they're sent there. They're meant to take him to some research station or something because he's special, gifted. They're like, we want him to go and receive an award, but we're also using this as a cover to transport a new device from a research station back to, because they've got the ring station or whatever it's called. That's their main base, the Starcom's main base. It's like orbiting Saturn. And another great thing I like about the show is it takes some time to get places, and they have to use that hyperdrive thing in order to go really far.
Yeah. And
really far is just between Earth and Saturn. You know, it's not like galaxies or anything. It's quite a long distance, and they, you know, if they just travelled there the normal way, it would take them weeks, months. But because they use this hyperdrive, they can get there quicker. But it's still not a long way away in the terms of like most other space shows.
Yeah. It's true. I think they even talk about it sometimes. Like, would you prefer to like take months to get to A or B?
Yeah, because Crowbar doesn't like it. Crowbar doesn't like traveling hyperspace, or it's called. But yeah, you're right though. In that episode, Crowbar acts like a real human for a change, and gives Flash some encouragement to be his authentic self, which is quite nice.
Yeah, I liked it because it was. I mean, I kind of get in the episode that I think they were going one place and then they got orders to go somewhere else. And then when they got there, they were given orders to go back to somewhere else. So like the team was kind of already annoyed at all of the orders they were getting to then were like, oh, can you then escort this kid somewhere? And then the kid is kind of getting on their nerves. So they're all kind of like having a go at the kid throughout the episode. And, you know, at the end of it, he does kind of save the day.
I think Dash doesn't like being a babysitter.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, like that's why I like that episode so much, because it actually felt like the people had characters and they had motivations, and it felt unlike some of the episodes. I wrote a little kind of synopsis of each one as I went along, and some of them just end with me writing, "I'm bored, I've had enough,"
Yes.
And that's it, you know. There's a few there that I just like this. What is even the point of this episode? Because they often do just kind of like switch focus, you know, and you're like, oh, okay. They say, oh, you need to do this thing, take this thing to there, and then it turns out they didn't. Or there's one where they go to a mining ship. Which one's that?
Oh yes, yeah.
Episode 9, a few bugs in the system.
Yeah.
So there's a series of malfunctions happening on a mining ship, which Starcom believes to be, because the head general guy, he's got a name, I can't remember his name, but the main guy from Starcom summons the three amigos to his office, and he says, "Well, I need you to go and investigate these malfunctions on this mining ship, which seem to be like sabotage, and I need you to do it incognito. You need to go there undercover to find out who's doing it." Okay, fine. So Crowbar says he knows an astromarine, because we'll get onto that in a minute. Remind me. He knows an astromarine who used to be a miner. So we meet Sergeant Champa Ryan.
Right.
I have the actual figure of Sergeant Champa Ryan right here. So we meet Sergeant Champa Ryan, who apparently used to be a miner. And he's like saying to them, "Oh, they'll see through it immediately. Miners are all a family. They all know each other. We won't be able to get away with it for 5 minutes when we get over there in disguise." And they don't. They're immediately recognised as Starcom people. It's like, well, so maybe you didn't need to do that. Like, you didn't need to kind of come up with that pretense. I suppose they're trying to force home the idea that they're all a big family or whatever. But like, it could have been done without all that mucking about.
And they kind of really they tried to drill it in that people. It's not easy for people to get in and off the ship. And when they get there, there's like residue of the bad guy ships have been there or something.
Yeah.
So something's up. But it takes a really long time for them to realize it's one of the drones that are causing the issue. I thought having this guy who was an old miner there, he'd be like, "Oh, well, that one must be a new model because I've never seen one like that before."
Yeah.
All of them are suspiciously, this bluey white, but this one's black.
Yeah.
And it seems to be going to the places where all these bad things are happening. And like, he didn't bring it up. They actually had to notice some screws out of place or something, and then they go looking for it.
I mean, I guess we should talk about the baddies, because like we said, we talked about Emperor Dark, who just seems to be getting on with shit and lets his subordinates, who aren't really necessarily evil, they're just kind of a bit mercenary, I guess. He lets them kind of get on with stuff, and he'll send them off on missions, but they do seem to just be milling about, coming up with their own plans, doing their own things, while he's busy on his ship with a face on the front, doing whatever he does in there. So you've got Malvana, and she's quite cool. I quite enjoyed her as a character, and she seemed to be very much kind of like she had an agenda, but it never really got too far into it.
Yeah, I thought there'd be more with her and Crowbar after she kind of like.
Yeah, she starts fancying him.
She fancies him when they're in that episode. They like track his body, or
they put like a bug in his spine or something, and they can see through his eyes.
And she was really impressed in how he kept like outmaneuvering them, and it's like, oh yeah, maybe this guy's, but then nothing happens.
Well, that's the thing. The things keep getting discarded. Like, there's a number of times where they try to set up some kind of relationship between Dash and other female characters, and then that'll kind of fizzle out. Next episode, we won't even mention that person anymore.
Yeah.
I was going to talk about the fact that you have Astro Marines, Star Wing, and Starbase Command. They're the three parts of Starcom.
Right. That's what the different badges are for, right? Or the different...
Yeah, and each one of the three characters is a colonel in that area.
Oh.
Did you not notice that?
No.
So Dash is Star Wing. So he flies these around.
Okay.
The spaceships. And then Crowbar, he is from the Astro Marines, and they drive these things around.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Slim, John Slim Griffin, he's from Starbase Command, and he sits around in the command stations doing commandy things.
Okay.
Which makes it weird that they always go off and do exactly the same as each other.
I was about to say that's all well and good, but they all do those things.
Yeah, they all fly Star Wolves. They all seem to be roughly as talented as each other at doing so. I suppose you do see Crowbar being more of an engineer, which you relate more with a kind of vehicle core, the Astro Marines. And I suppose Slim, he is more commandy because he's more by the book. But that's it. I don't think Derringer is ever really portrayed as being an amazing pilot.
Not really.
No.
I mean, I guess by numbers that they're really good, because like the bad guys have like so many of these drones.
Yeah, what coming at them
all the time, but like there's only 3 of them, and only like I think 2, maybe 2 times they get backup from the rest of Starcom that turn up sometimes.
Oh, I think there's maybe 2 or 3 episodes where you meet some of the other people.
Yeah.
some of the other Starcom operatives.
They're like, oh, we've run out of ammunition or fuel and we're kind of stuck here. What will we do? And then the big boys turn up and like Magnalock them.
Yeah, they have to save a guy who's got Slim's nephews, nieces. So
he took about on a day trip in a
laser rat.
In the laser rat, going around Mars, and then there's like, oh yeah, you could drive for a bit, and they didn't see this massive sandstorm in front of them. And they get so close to you, it's like, oh, maybe we should turn around.
Maybe we shouldn't be driving straight at this.
So how did you miss it?
Yeah, exactly. But that guy, I mean, a lot of these guys are toys. They are in the line.
Oh, I mean, it was guy with mustache number one.
Well, yeah. But the toys have mustaches, though.
Oh, do they? Oh, okay.
So it's important, But yeah, like you say, you alluding to the fact that, the baddies have... So they've got general guys and gals with space helmets on. But then they also have, like, legions of robots.
And what's the main robot guy called?
The main robot guy is called General Torvik.
General Torvik. Okay.
General Torvik is my favourite character on the bad guy side.
I was going to say, I think he's like got a really cool design. I think, is there a toy of him?
Yeah, loads. They all look exactly the same.
Okay.
Because they're all the robots.
Oh, the robots.
They all have different. I mean, obviously, General Torvik has a different color deco to a different one. You know what I mean? Like, so
I liked it. I liked his, the episodes where he repair and he had these ideas of like, a logical way of taking out Starcom. I mean, he almost achieves it a couple of times. Like
yeah, I loved how deadpan he was, and how kind of depressed he sounded. that there was a great one where he basically hacks into Starcom using. Oh, here we go. So yeah, the Marv Wolfman episode, which is my second favorite. You see, but yeah, basically there's a Starmax bomber being piloted by Lieutenant Bob T. Rogers. See, a different guy, and he gets attacked by Shadow Force, and he crashes, and he takes the Star Wolf that was magna-locked onto his Starmax bomber and flies away before it crashes. But Shadow Force just aren't interested in him. And they're actually interested in the Starmax, and basically General Torvik wants to salvage the computer system chip, which would allow him to control all Starcom vehicles. And I like the fact that he gets this chip, he's like he deciphers it in no time, and he goes,
"The code was ridiculously simple. Those fools have handed me control of their entire arsenal. Starcom is
finished." He's brilliant, and it turns out that the Starcom ships are run on really shoddy software that's really easy to hack.
I mean, that's a hint of realism, I suppose. I guess you could.
Yeah, Torvik is cool. I like him a lot.
It does make you wonder why the Shadow Force haven't really won, because they do have the numbers and they do have a lot. It has an endless supply of these drones with varying degrees of smart AI-ness to them. So
I think the problem is none of General Dark's subordinates are very loyal, and his armies of robots have stormtrooper syndrome in that they are terrible shots, awful pilots, and 3 guys from Starcom make light work of them constantly. And they never hurt any human people from the baddies. They only hurt the robots. It's like they always make a point of it as well. It's like, oh, they were just drones that we blew up.
Yeah, they make a check of like, oh, there's no life forms in this. All right, then full blast.
Yeah, we could blow this up then. Yeah,
I did like the episode where they were Crowbar, Slim, and then 2 bad guys were trapped on a moon or somewhere.
Yeah,
and they had to work together to get off of it. I did like that episode because it really drove the point that these bad guys are bad, but they're also other human beings.
They're just on the payroll.
Yeah, exactly. They were like, "Oh, we're going to double cross them, or when are we going to do this?" And the guy's like, "No, like if we do that, we're all going to die. Like we have to work together. Like, what are you trying to do?"
We are in space.
Yes,
and things can go pretty awful if we don't work together. Yeah, they've got no fuel. They can't get anywhere. They're all going to run out of air, or they're going to die. It's going to get, it's going to get too hot or too cold. So they have to work together. So yeah, I like that about it. So I mean, I know I've heard a lot of people kind of slag the TV series off, and it is a bit dull. But I do quite like bits of it. I do quite like the idea of it, and it's not just mindless, like a lot of shows of the time are.
Do you know what I think it's missing? Is a third faction.
A third faction?
Which I thought we were going to get in the cartoon, because there was that episode where there was a village of pacifists who grew oranges.
Yeah, that was a weird one.
But it wasn't the bad guys who were in that episode. It was like these other mercenary type people.
Yeah.
Who had just stolen their ships. And I thought that there might be another part of the Toyline that I didn't even know about. Like there's just like another group.
Sadly not. No, that was that.
I thought that it could do with another angle, because it's not, because like I was saying, like this guy at the top of the bad guys is not doing anything. Like I mean, you need maybe a bit more alien or science fiction going on just to.
Yeah, but it's kind of sci-fi in a more traditional sense. It's not fantasy. It's not science fantasy. It's like, what would it really be like if we went to space, and how would we explore the our solar system, and what if there was another faction who wanted to stop us in our tracks? Because there are no aliens. I think aliens would ruin it, to be honest.
You think so?
Yeah, it'd certainly ruin the Toyline, in my opinion. But the TV
it might. Yeah, I mean, maybe it would. Well, I don't know. I mean, when I think of it, I think more of like early doors of like Star Trek, of just them being part of Star Command, or in a sense of like they've reached out to other planets. We've befriended other aliens, and they're willing to share their technology, or whatever. Like it's not. You'd have to go too crazy with it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it would have worked within the context of the show. I'm just not sure it would work with the Toyline. But you mentioned Star Trek. I think it's more Star Trek than Star Wars. And I think that was the problem for a lot of kids. Because kids want things shooting lasers, and they want adventure, they want swashbuckling. Don't think about this too hard. I know it makes no sense stuff, especially in the 80s. When at the time you had things like He-Man and Transformers and so on to compare, and this came out the same year as Turtles did,
Wow.
So Turtles, like that, the very definite definition of a dumb children's TV show, and it was brightly coloured, action packed. It had Ninja Turtles in it. And then you've got these guys in spacesuits walking around conserving air. It's not as exciting. Really isn't.
And but I think it's one of those things that I think even if it had like a really cool intro, it might have hooked people a bit more. Like it's just.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess like, because obviously the real reason it stopped is because of the lack of sales of toys, isn't it? Like it wasn't just a cartoon's fault. Like
but the cartoon was there to sell the toys.
Yeah. But I mean, but the toys were good. Like I mean, like it's not to say that when we're thinking about this, I'm thinking about the show wasn't a very good selling point, but the toys themselves. Like once I learned more about the toys, I kind of got why people like the toys. So you think it's another? Is it just that, or is it also the toys maybe weren't as fantastical? Because I mean, the good guys toy. I don't really like the Starcom white, orange, slightly grey color schemes of the toys. Like I like all the bad guys' color schemes. Like all the.
I mean, I did when I was a kid, and I still do. But I think what I like about Starcom, I mean, let's get into it, shall we? Basically, let's get into the toys, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the two factions. You've got Starcom and Shadow Force. And Starcom is grounded in reality. They look like what NASA space shuttles might become in the future.
Oh, yeah.
And they look like what NASA vehicles or like the moon buggy, the moon rover might become in the future. Like they look like functional human vehicles built by humans to be used in space.
Mm-hmm.
I love that about them. I know they may not seem as sexy and cool as the Shadow Force stuff, which is a bit more kind of like fantastical sci-fi.
Yes.
But they look like the kind of ships that we would actually have if we were doing this. If the human race went into space and were doing this, they'd probably have something that looked a bit like this.
But see, to me, that's not as... It doesn't hook me in the same way that, like, say, Target Master era of Transformers, where they're weird, like Misfire, Slugslinger colors. That era of spaceships that are just a bit more, like you're saying, fantastical, like that would hook me as a young child more.
I think there's a place for that, which is what you've got. But like I've always said that some of my favourite stuff for the Transformers line is my favourite thing about the Transformers line when it came out was it was realistic vehicles that turned into robots. And when they were realistic vehicles, they looked like realistic vehicles. They were robots in disguise. They were not robots that turned into batshit crazy shit. Like they didn't, this robot turns into a giant vampire bat.
Okay.
Right, well, it's not in disguise then, is it?
All right, but maybe even the sense of like, okay, so you got the...
Not that I don't like that stuff, I'm just saying. But
No. But I mean, like, even in terms of maybe even in the context of the show, so like they've got the Starcom jets, fighters, Star Wolf, all of those things. But then maybe even just having character-specific designs, like those three general guys, they have like a special coloured ones that were different.
Yeah, you're moving into mask area here, aren't you? Really? Like,
well, this is something I also hear that's really like people kind of keep in the same vein, because aren't they all kind of a similar size? The guys,
the mask figures are a similar kind of height, and they're transforming vehicles, so it's similar. So yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, they could have done that. They could have gone with more. I think that is something that's missing from both the toy line and the show is characters.
Yeah.
There aren't any characters. I mean, yes, they sold guys on card backs, like individual figures, but they were all essentially the same design. You've got like maybe 3 or 4 designs, and then they were just different color schemes. So you had like the Astro Marine, the Star Wing guy, and the Command guy. They all look slightly different, but they're all guys in space helmets, and that's the Starcom guys. And then on the other side, Shadow Force, you have the ones that I can't remember what the names of the two factions are, but basically you've got like Shadow Force pilot guys and the Shadow Force guys who drove vehicles, and then you had the robots. The Shadow Force was split between the Invasion Force, the ground troops, Star Marder, the fly guys, and the Robot Drone Force. Self-explanatory. Something we never mentioned is that the Shadow Force logo was a very simple black triangle within a larger inverted red triangle, or orange. A sort of upside-down Triforce. Not very creative, but A, branding really wasn't Starcom's strong point, and B, Lego were doing the exact same thing at the same time with the Blacktron, so good enough for the most successful toy line ever, good enough for Starcom. So it's kind of 6 different designs, and then they're just different variations on that design, and they've all got names, but there's nothing particular to identify them. Like, here's two guys. Now, how different are they really? Not massively.
One's got a unique space belt, and the other one doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. They're both guys with space helmets on, and they've got kind of spacesuits. This one's a flying guy, and this one's a driving guy, as it were, and that's it. So yeah, I know what you mean. I think that is what's lacking.
I mean, because I feel like it's because I feel like now that I know where this falls in the timeline of toy history, as it were, it does feel like the ripples of this kind of concept in other things as it goes along, or at least that's like the naming conventions of it. Because obviously now I hear, when I first heard about Starcom and I hear it in the show and stuff, my brain automatically goes to Star Command, which is, would you like to guess what that is?
Is it a computer game?
I mean, it could also be a computer game. What's the other toy? What's the toy line that we were talking about the other day that has gone off the rails of how expensive it is? Like not toy line, figures from a toy line that were crazy expensive that we saw. Like I showed you a picture of them, and you're like, "Why is it that expensive? Why is it?"
Everything's expensive now. What are we talking about?
Toy Story.
Oh, Toy Story. Oh, so yeah, what Star Command is what?
Where's where Buzz is from?
Yeah, but I mean, it's a very generic term. All the terms in Starcom are really generic, though, aren't they?
Oh yeah, but I mean, just the idea of Starcom in Buzz's world of it being this space station in our solar system where they're protecting them from evil Emperor Zurg and his endless drones of robots and things. Like, it feels very like whoever was involved in making that definitely likes Starcom.
Although to be honest, it's a very simple concept, isn't it? Really, like, you have the good guys who are like a kind of peacekeeping force, kind of space exploration force, and then the bad guys who have the most generic name ever, Shadow Force, led by the most generically named leader, Emperor Dark, who are just nasty fuckers for some reason.
Yep.
And they have an army of robots. It's hardly the most original and fantastic idea, you know what I mean? So
No. But it's just like, it's interesting how that kind of, when it's that type of sci-fi that's a bit more grounded in realism, that type of way of thinking kind of relates to this, and you can kind of see the parallels.
Yeah, I can see that, but I suppose that is where most people would think it would go if you were to try and keep it realistic. I mean, you look at anything that is any kind of realistic hard sci-fi in space, like Alien, for example, and you have some big kind of company or Star Trek, like you have some big collective that go out into space and start exploring it or exploiting it or whatever. And then you have kind of workaday people who just do jobs, and then, people who higher up, you have a hierarchy, and then they, encounter things as they go along. So you kind of expect it because it's utilitarian, because it's kind of trying to be based in kind of fact. My optics! I'll give you a bit of background on the toy line then. So the toy line was developed before the TV series, but was timed to hit the stores around the same time as the first episode in the US.
Wow. You hear that, Hasbro?
Yes, exactly, yeah. Apparently, Tomy developed a lot of the clockwork tech that it uses.
Oh.
And that it is quite similar to what they used in Zoids.
Okay.
And we talked about it earlier, but the play pattern is that the smaller toys are designed to compact down into a standard size and shape that can easily be stored in the larger vehicles. So, for example, I have with me, here's the Halve 7,
right,
which is basically best described as as one of those trucks that picks up skips.
Oh yeah.
Right, and it's got a little fuel pod on the back, and that fuel pod is what everything compacts down into. So this fuel pod is the same size and shape as this laser rat when it's made small.
Right.
It's exactly the same. And also this battle crane as well. Battle crane, fuel pod, the same size and shape.
You sent me a video of some of the commercials and some of the toy adverts, and there's a guy explaining this play pattern, and he didn't seem very enthused about it when he was explaining it.
Well, he was just some actor, wasn't he? And he was just put on screen to go through the new stuff for the next year. I don't know who that was for, to be honest, but yeah.
He didn't really sell it to me, I can tell you.
I mean, have you watched a Hasbro live stream?
It felt like that. It was really weird.
No, but at least he's being honest. People in the Hasbro live stream are going, "This is amazing." And it's like, you don't think that.
But I mean, like, okay, I mean, even, not even like you could just tell, like, he wasn't being paid enough.
Agreed. So yeah. Anyway, so they're all designed to be carried inside or fit inside other ships. And they've also got magnets so they can pick up other vehicles or attach to other vehicles. So, for example, here's my Star Max bomber.
Mm-hmm.
And here's my Star Wolf. And the Star Wolf can fit on top there, onto the magnet. It's got a magnet on the bottom, and it magnets to... What's the word? The magnet attaches to the metal plate on the top of the Star Max, and now it's attached.
Mm-hmm.
It won't fall off. So yeah, they do that, and the same goes for the little battle crane. Can pick up that crate and carry it around. So it has all that kind of stuff, and also it has a little foot that I can press, and it falls off. Anyway. So yeah, they're all kind of designed to do that. You've got the Magnalock features with the guys with their magnetic feet, so they can stand on things. And there's some really, really cool stuff that we'll talk about in a bit in some of the bigger play sets that work with that.
Mm.
And then there's the power deploy features. So essentially, I said that things compact down into a crate shape.
Mm.
The Star Wolf also compacts down into a crate shape. And then you press a little button, and there you go. And the same goes for, this is the Laser Rat. It looks like a crate. You flip that switch. And etc., etc. So there's all that kind of stuff to it. And then, the magnets set things off. So, I mean, I think it's an incredibly clever toy line.
Yeah, I mean, it's got its... you could really build up a little scenario or scene where the bad guys are taking this, or you're based up here, and it's a lot of that, child's imagination can run wild with this type of stuff.
Yeah, everything fits together. Like the Star Max was like the flagship toy in the first wave, and everything works with it. Like you can stick the Star Wolf on the top of it, and then you've got the power deploy feature is the cargo bay, which slowly opens. Mine opens very slowly because it's quite old, obviously. But then in that cargo bay that comes out the back, I've got this little thing that you can put people in. Got little chairs in, but it's basically like another crate. But any of these vehicles can go in here, can drive up the ramps, go inside there, and then pop them back in there.
Wow.
And then it's got that bit that pops open as well. And there's room for 2 guys to sit inside.
Yeah, isn't there like a thing like all the cockpits, kind of like a spring?
Yep, this is spring-loaded.
Yeah.
The cockpits are all spring-loaded. Same goes for the Star Wolf. Yeah, and they have stickers as well. The stickers are a bit of a pain, obviously, because they just get old and decrepit in time. But yeah, everything kind of works together. Everything can fit inside each other or be picked up by the other thing. And the same goes for the bad guy stuff. Like, even though that's a little bit more kind of future-y looking, a little bit more kind of sleek and kind of sexy.
It looks... I'm sorry. I think all the bad guy stuff that I've seen look amazing. And I think maybe that is to its detriment because from what I've seen now, and I don't know what your experience is with going back and looking at older toys, I would imagine the line must be riddled with like yellowing with all the white plastic.
Yes, it is. Yes,
And-
it is. I mean, you probably can't see it on my Star Max, but this isn't a bad example. But if you look at the difference between here and here,
yeah,
there is yellowing of certain parts, and I've seen some really yellow Star Max bombers, like really, like horrible kind of like mustard yellow, really bad.
And is there like because there is ways you can undo yellowing.
Oh yeah.
But I guess it's all the stickers and stuff that kind of like would be.
Yeah, I mean, you probably have to remove stickers, I suppose you could get away with it, but I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to get into that, but yes, I know that there are ways of doing it, like peroxide and so on. And
Yeah.
but I mean, my Star Wolves are really nice. There's some yellowing, but very little. But yeah, I know what you mean. The baddie stuff doesn't suffer from yellowing because it's not white.
Yeah. I think that might. I mean, obviously, none of these toy lines will think of the longevity of
course not,
any of this stuff. But as being someone looking back at it, I think that would be like what would sway me even more to the bad guy stuff.
Well, the thing is, right? So I didn't mention. I didn't get around to mentioning earlier that when I was a kid, I had these toys. I had lots of Shadow Force, which is why going back into it vintage. I've got the Starcom stuff first. I'm going to get some Shadow Force stuff definitely, but I think my brother had a Star Max bomber or someone did, and I played with it a lot. And I'm pretty sure he had the command center, the big command center as well.
Wow. Yeah.
But I had a Shadow Bat, which is like the main baddie's spaceship. I had a Shadow Invader, which is like their little their equivalent of the Laser Rat. It's like a little kind of buggy.
Yeah.
And I had 2 Shadow Parasites, which
so you could lock it into
which both locked into the wings of the Shadow Bat. So I had those when I was a kid. So in a way, going back to it, I wanted to get the Starcom stuff, and I love it. I mean, it's brilliant.
Okay, well that makes sense to me then. If you've already experienced the one, you want to try a bit more of the other.
I mean, I definitely played with Starcom toys. This is what I mean when I said it's weird that no one remembers it, because I remember people having it. I remember other kids having it. It wasn't just me. Like, I remember going round to a guy's place and he had the 6-shooter, which is quite a rare toy now, because it was one of the ones that came out right towards the end of the line. So it was only really released in Europe, I think. I remember someone having that. I remember people having the Shadow Bandit, the one that kind of picks up stuff. Like, it wasn't just me, Other people had Starcom. I remember kind of begging my parents to take me to Wings and Wheels in Leon C, because I knew that they sold Starcom there, and they had the figures on the card backs, the actual, like, the individual figures, because the line consisted of, like, carded figures, playsets, and vehicles. And the vehicles, for the first 2 waves at least, all came with a dedicated pilot. And they were unique. They were different to any of the carded figures. But if you wanted enough people to man your Star Max bomber, you needed to buy some more figures. Like, you wanted guys to sit in the back and so on. And they all had job titles on their cards, and some of them would be like Laser Rat Gunner, right? So you've got your Laser Rat with the driver. You need the Laser Rat Gunner to go on the back and fire the gun. So you know what I mean? Like, they had that. They thought it through that far. Now maybe they should have had more kind of proper characters, but they had thought through. Well, who are these guys? Oh, well, this guy works with this guy on the Half 7, and this guy is a gunner, or this guy is a co-pilot for this particular ship. They thought that through, and the same goes for like the bad guy stuff as well, because a lot of these things had more than one cockpit or another place for someone to sit. Like the Shadow Bat had 2 cockpits. It had like one facing forward, one facing backwards. But yeah. So yeah, I mean, there were 26 carded figures, 6 play sets, and 23 vehicles, and 1 mail-away figure, which was Emperor Dark.
I don't know why anyone wanted that.
Well, at least he was different. At least he was a character.
Why was there no? Or maybe there was. Maybe I don't want to make assumptions. Was there no figures of like the lady?
I don't think there was, actually. I don't think
there was none of her or even the other guy, the bigger guy.
Oh no, he was a figure.
They made a figure of him. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't think they made any of the lady figures, to be honest.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure, but I don't remember there being any lady figures, which is a bit of a shame. But it was the 80s.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not like they had to, like... It would have just been her in another body and another colour scheme, surely. They wouldn't have, like...
It's possible that she was in the line, but she just looked like a guy.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I've found it...
But I don't know. I can't remember. I don't remember her being in it, but I know that a lot of the guys in the show, in the TV show, or pretty much all of the guys in the TV show had a figure.
Okay.
Orion is correct. There were no female figures, but most of the main showcast did have figures, which were generally single-carded figures rather than packed with vehicles. Presumably, this was to encourage kids who watched the show to buy the extra figures. But they all look kind of the same, you know? But what is interesting, though, about the figures is they've all got unique face sculpts. Like, they're not generic. And, like, some of the guys have got tashes. Some of the guys have got... Honestly, the paint, the deco on the figures is pretty impressive because they're really small, but they're covered in tampos. They've got, like, tiny, like, insignias on their chests, and, like, they've got... stripes on their arms and so on, and you know, something on the crest of their helmet. Like, they're really detailed for such small figures, and quite articulate. They've got knees.
Wow, that's something to behold at the time.
Yeah, I mean, for a 2.5-inch figure, pretty impressive, really. And they all came with the individually packed ones came with backpacks and guns with a little hose that attached the gun to the backpack.
But when you used to play with this as a child, did you play with the Starcom figures, or were the Starcom figures with your Transformers and with your Zoids, or with your other stuff? Did you kind of like set up a kind of mini universe of your own?
I don't know if I did, but other people did, definitely. I was a little bit more specific. That's just me, you know.
It sounds like it, yes.
Yeah, I can't mix and match that way.
Okay, yeah. It seems interesting because it's such a... I mean, obviously there are loads of bigger scale characters with vehicles, but like there was a lot of little guy vehicle type toy lines of a similar size. So I was wondering if there was that.
Yeah, I think obviously people did. I mean, I know that loads of people did. Like, and this stuff kind of works quite well with Mask, for example. But yeah, I mean, they obviously there's some crossover appeal. But I mean, I didn't.
Who owns it now? Like, is there someone who actually owns...
Oh, I have a guess.
It's Hasbro.
Of course it fucking is.
Really?
Who owns everything now?
But so is this Toyline ever been... Has it ever been relaunched, rebooted in any sense?
No.
Ever?
Never. Ever.
Not even like a special edition NASA thing? Like a...
No.
Wow.
Never. So I suppose I should go into why it wasn't a success. So Coleco, who made the line, were quite well known in a way for having a success and then quickly following it by a massive flop.
Right.
By kind of like overstretching themselves. So they'd go, "Oh God, we're making money! Quick, buy everything!" And then whatever they bought would fall to pieces, and then they'd have to start again.
Right.
So they started as like a leather. Made their company making leather straps and bindings for like shoes and stuff.
Okay.
And Hasbro started making pencils and shit. So you know,
that's true. Yeah.
It's no different, you know. But yeah, they were making these leather shoes. I think they started making like, kind of cowboy gear for kids or something, and that's how they kind of got into the toy market. But at the same time, they were also making paddling pools and swimming pools. But then they ended up kind of jumping on the video game bandwagon by what the Atari. Atari was, you know, the first big home video gaming push. You know, the first generation of home video games. Atari with Pong and so on, and they kind of made their own Pong clone. It was a machine called the Telstar, which was like a kind of a home Pong game thing with little paddles and a turny thing.
Yeah.
And They sold like gangbusters. They were massively successful, and then they kind of started making console cartridges and handhelds and tabletop arcade machines and things like that. In fact, a friend of mine, a friend who collects Transformers and also a published writer about these things, Mike Diver, he's writing a book about those tabletop arcades, and Coleco made those. But then when there was a video game crash in like 1983, they got burnt from that. So they kind of went, oh shit, what we're going to do next? They tried to make a home computer. That didn't work. That was a massive flop. And then they created Cabbage Patch dolls, which were a massive hit.
Yeah.
Like they were gigantic for about a year. like they were the biggest toy that Christmas and huge. And then Coleco just went, right, oh great, we're making money again. And they went out and bought a board games company and this and that and the other, and again flopped again. And Starcom was kind of their last ditch attempt. And it just, I think due to it being released when the boys toy market was so saturated with, you know, the massive stuff of the 80s, like G.I. Joe, Transformers, He-Man, Mask, Real Ghostbusters, Turtles had just come out. Like, there was so much stuff for it to compete with that it just didn't capture the imaginations of the kids. And the cartoon wasn't particularly great. There was a very, very short-lived comic in the UK, I found out. Very short-lived.
Okay.
So, yeah, it wasn't... It just didn't quite grab the kids' attention enough. And it was over within like a year or so, and Mattel bought up the license and kept selling them for a few years. It ended in the US and then continued to, because it started in 1986, and they continued to sell toys up until about 1990 in Europe.
Wow.
So not bad, really, 4 years. But in the US, I think they only got like a year, maybe two, tops.
Wow. And then eventually Hasbro bought it.
Yeah, eventually Hasbro bought up everything from Coleco.
Wow.
So I think Mattel just owned the license to sell Starcom for a number of years, but Hasbro bought up Coleco lock, stock and barrel once they folded, because they went bankrupt. So Hasbro own it now, pretty much.
It's another thing in their vault that they refuse to do anything with.
Well, yeah, like Mask, like all sorts. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd rather they didn't. That's what's wonderful about it. Because it was a flop, because it's largely forgotten, we don't have to put up with endless nostalgia shit. Yes! I don't have to watch Hasbro constantly reheat Starcom over and over again.
So not even if they did like one of those Transformer crossovers and they just made a Star Bomber transform into something. Something as little as that, not a full reboot of the line, just...
It would be a nice little nod, wouldn't it? I
Yeah, I think something like that would be nice. I mean, if they don't do like Skyfire, Jetfire, or something, that doesn't. Why?
Yeah, no, they'd make it transform into one of the pilots, wouldn't they? That's the kind of stupid shit they do. They wouldn't even make it transform into a Transformers character.
Here's Crowbar.
Yeah,
that's what you all want.
A crowbar that turns into a half 7. Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, let's talk about the actual toys, then, shall we? A bit more in depth. Are there any ones that particularly caught your eye?
Well, apart from the Shadow Bat, and what's the bases? The it's one of the other.
Yeah, there's two base set. There's two base play sets.
The one that has got the door thing.
Yeah, so that's the one. So my brother had that. The Starbase Command.
That's a really cool base.
Yeah,
in terms of like old bases, that
suffers from serious yellowing. That one.
Oh,
but that was brilliant. And my brother had it, and like, yeah, what was great about it was that you had like so it's basically like a kind of moon base, really. Mm-hmm. And you have a little command chair in there, and you get a commander guy with it, and it has a little cannon, and you wind the cannon up, and then the cannon turrets will spin, but only when you put a guy in the cannon seat. The magnets on his feet activate the rotating cannon.
This is really cool. That's a really cool, yeah.
And then they also had an airlock, a working airlock. So
I don't know what...
Underneath the floor of the airlock, there is a magnet on a lever that when you move the lever, it moves backwards and forwards. So you move the lever, and the guy who's stuck to the magnet through the floor, you move it, and the magnet moves under the floor and drags the guy through the airlock, and the door slides open as he goes through the first one and close behind him. And then the second door slides open, he goes straight through it, and all by you moving this lever.
When I saw it in action, it's incredible that was not like, I don't know, toy technology that was used more. Like, it's really cool. I don't know if it's a thing to do with like the magnets or the size of the figure that really makes it work as well as it does, but it's really cool. Like, describing it does not do it justice. You got to see it, and we see
it. Yeah. Look it up. Yeah, it is unbelievable. Like, the magnets are really strong. Like, they didn't cheap out on them, which is great, because they could be really kind of like weak magnets or whatever, and they stick on perfectly. They don't fall off. No one falls off. And that's PlayStation also had a radar dish that would turn if you stood a guy in front of the console that operated it. That's all you had to do. Just plonk the guy down. And no batteries. None. Zero.
Why was that a thing? Like, why was that such a pushing force on the Toyline? Like, was there a big like problem with batteries at the time? Like, I mean,
no, I just think it was an innovation. I just think they went, you know what, we could do this with clockwork. Because, right, so for example, the Starmax bomber, like the cargo bay, which is the power deploy feature of the Starmax bomber, right? It's completely clockwork, as it were, and it doesn't need winding because you wind it by resetting it. That rewinds it. Oh. And so many of them work that way. So there is no need for any external power source because you're rewinding the motor every time, you know? So it doesn't need power. It's very clever. And it's the same kind of motors that have been used in toys for years, like, you know, like pull back and go motors, you know, that kind of stuff. And in fact, the Shadow Invader had a pull back and go motor in it.
But it's just the ones where like the magnets unlock that ability as well is quite cool.
Yeah, it is.
It's, I don't know, just from like, I mean, I guess now with the way like, you know, toys are so, I don't know, updated or they're in a different pocket now. But I mean, back then, I could definitely see the appeal and see why, as a child or a young person, I would have been drawn to that. So I don't really understand why it didn't work unless it was just the story attached to them.
I think it was a failure in marketing, especially in the US, because like I say, it was a bigger deal over here. Like, I can go through what was released in the US, and it is just the Battle Crane, the Star Wolf, the Half 7, which is like the one that looks a bit like a skip truck, the Laser Rat, the Rail Gunner, which is a bit like the Laser Rat but has a kind of turret on it, the Starmax Bomber, the Shadow Invader, which was the one that had the pull back and go feature and kind of turns into, it's basically the baddie version of the Laser Rat. The Shadow Parasite, baddie version of the Star Wolf, the triangular, the really cool triangle. I love those. They're lovely. They're really, really, really cool. So the little fighter. The Shadow Raider, I had that as a kid. That was, I forgot to mention that earlier. I had that. That's amazing. It's like a kind of tank that kind of goes up on legs.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And when you press the power deploy button, it stretches out and a cannon pops out the top. It's really good. And there's room for another guy to sit in the back because it's stretched out. So there's that. And then the Shadow Bat. And then the following year, you got the Starhawk, which was like a double cockpit good guy ship that when you press the button, it split in two and a cannon popped out the middle.
Yeah.
And the Shadow Vampire baddie ship, which looked a bit like the Shadow Bat, but it had like vertical takeoff and landing, VTOL kind of a things. Have you seen that one?
I feel like I have, but I need to refresh my memory of that one.
I'll send you a quick picture of it if I can find one. It is. Here it is. But it's very similar in design to the Shadow Bat, but it faces both directions.
Oh yes.
And it has a trigger underneath, and when you press the trigger, the engines move backwards and forwards.
Oh, cool.
But that was it though. That was as much as you got in the US. That was the end of the US line.
But what I'm trying to get at is that obviously it's NASA who have played a big part in this, and America's the place they want to be getting these people to go work for NASA or join their program. Goodness knows what the numbers actually were of people who eventually found their way into a job because of this toy line, especially maybe even on the European side of people going over or something. It's just interesting. As soon as I heard that it actually had something to do with them, I was like,
well, I don't know. It'd be interesting to learn. I mean, obviously they weren't funding it in any way, so when it folded, it folded. It wasn't. They were just in conjunction with.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that when Mattel took it over proper and started reissuing it in Europe and so on, they took all the American flags off the ships and that. They kind of stripped it of that kind of US Space Force thing, because like the show says, Starcom, the US Space Force, and so did the boxes for a long time until Mattel took over, and they kind of phased that out. It just became Starcom on its own, no US Space Force thing, and they took the flags off.
That's one thing I haven't actually looked at, to be fair. I've looked at the figures themselves. I've not seen what the art or the box art looks like.
Really?
No.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Not a lot of the things I was looking at had the boxes. Let me just go do
that. Link I sent you has loads of box art on.
Let me just look at that.
So it's all kind of red-orange with kind of the toy rendered in artwork.
See, even that looks cool.
Yeah, so they're all really... The box art's great. The boxes are really nice. And, hey, look, no windows.
No windows, yeah.
Yeah, didn't need them then, don't need them now.
I always just find it so funny when I see carded figures like this. There's this so tiny little guy in this huge card back.
Well, yeah, it needed to take up some space on the shelf, didn't it?
This Shadow Parasite, it reminds me of what was they called? Remember that old anime I always was talking about, Psy something that has the it's another space show in the 80s, but it had another name. I'll find a picture of it. But the vehicles in that, like the spaceships, look a lot like the Shadow Parasite. Okay, cool. So they just so what do they do instead? If they got rid of all the American stuff, do they just keep the same type of color scheme and just?
They did keep the same kind of color scheme for a while when they dropped the US Space Force from the packaging. Here you go. Here's one. Like this one. This is the 6-shooter, which is rare because it was released right at the end of the line. And you can see it doesn't say US Space Force underneath Starcom.
Yeah.
And it hasn't got the American flag on it anywhere, So they did do that, but then they also did some big kind of play sets that came out right at the end, where you got a Star Max bomber, a Star Wolf, and I think you got maybe a laser rat or something. You got or maybe the battle crane. You got a few things together, and you got one which was a shadow bat with 2 shadow parasites all in the same box.
Sounds like they're trying to get rid of stock.
But I suppose. Actually, the Starfleet action set comprised of a Star Max bomber, a Star Wolf, a Missile Fox, 6 Starcom figures, and 2 Shadow Force figures. Details on the Shadow Force action set are quite sketchy, but it included a Shadow Bat, 2 Shadow Parasites, and an assortment of figures. Needless to say, both sets are very rare indeed, and fetch a pretty penny on the collector's market. Those had very different artwork.
Okay.
I don't have pictures of those to show you, but they're very different artwork. But some of this stuff, After they stopped doing it in America, you got loads more in the UK and in Europe and Canada and Asia and so on. Like Missile Fox, Shadow Bandit, Shadow Spy, Shadow Blast Track, Sidewinder, Skyroller, Tornado Gunship, Mobile Action Pods, the Laser Artillery, the Double... there was one ship that wasn't released called the Double Fighter, never came out. But the 6-shooter and the Shadow Upriser, which was like...
that's like...
is the rarest one.
You were saying, isn't that the most like expensive or ridiculously priced in the second-hand market?
It goes for like over $1,000. Like... That's how, because it's hard to find in good condition. If you've got it in good condition, like it's hard to find in good condition and working condition. Because the thing about these things is that those motors fail over time.
Yeah.
So, like the Shadow Upriser is basically like a mobile landing platform, and it rises up on a kind of like 2 crossing kind of struts either side. It rises up and the platform kind of folds out, so you could land any enemy ships on the top of it, and then it has a lift up the back, and you can put a guy on the lift, and it starts lifting the guy up, like because the magnets set it off.
That's so cool.
It is really good. There's loads of great things in the line like that. For instance, like the Shadow Spy, which it's an enemy fighter that turns into a Starcom crate.
Yes, I did see this. Yeah. I mean...
And not only does it do that, so it can look like a Starcom crate and it can fit inside a Starcom ship and it can, mingle in. When it's transformed into a fighter, it's the exact right shape to fit onto the wing of a Shadow Bat.
Wow.
Just like a Shadow Parasite does. They thought about it all. It's a really well put together toy line.
What do you think was the draw outside of America then for this toy line that just didn't connect with the kids in America? Because obviously, was the cartoon available here? Like, did you watch it on TV?
Not that I'm aware of.
Was it on VHS?
I think it might have been more like that. I don't remember it being on television. I think maybe there's just less competition here than there was over there.
Yeah.
And maybe British kids are just smarter. Eh?
I mean...
We didn't need silly TV shows like constantly bombarding us with although we did have them, it wasn't as bad as it was in America, constantly vying for your attention. Do you know what I mean?
That's true.
Like in America, you had cable television. You could watch cartoons any time of the bloody day. You could put Nickelodeon on. We didn't have that here, not really, unless you had satellite television, and few people did in the 80s. So you didn't have that kind of constant bombardment, which is, again, it goes back to why I think the comics were a bigger deal here than they were in America, like for Transformers, for example, or for G.I. Joe, Action Force. Like the comics were a bigger deal because the TV show wasn't as omnipresent, You
see, you brought that up earlier, so there was a comic as well, right?
Yeah, really, really short-lived. It was basically a secondary strip in Eagle. Eagle was a boys' comic book of the time. Basically, I did look into it, and there was a 3D comic book drawn by Gary Leach, who, again, you won't know who that is, but he's quite famous. He was the guy who drew Miracle Man, which was one of... in
the Justice League International?
No.
Oh.
That's Mr. Miracle.
Oh, close enough.
Not really.
So who's Miracle Man?
So Miracle Man was an old character. It was basically a kind of rip-off of Shazam or Captain Marvel.
Okay.
A British rip-off. But he got picked up by Alan Moore. And Alan Moore wrote Miracle Man for a while. And it was... A lot of people think it is. For the time, it was incredible. Oh. It was really quite dark. Some really awful shit happens in it. Oh. It's a lot more adult than you'd expect it to be.
Yeah, from a name like from that, I would have thought it's.
Oh, and it's famously been through a huge kind of wrangling because Miracle Man is now owned by Marvel. they changed its name to Marvel Man.
Oh.
Okay. And Alan Moore's like, if you reprint it, I don't want my name on it.
Oh.
So now they did reprint it. They reprinted it about maybe 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. They reprinted it. Gary Leach is sadly dead now. He was the artist on it. I got him to sign my first copy, and on the credits it says art by Gary Leach, script or story by the original writer. Alan Moore just doesn't want to be involved.
Oh.
But anyway, yes, so Gary Leach drew this 3D comic, and then there was three-part strip in Eagle, in 3 issues of Eagle, published and drawn by another guy, Sandy James, apparently. But that was it. So in a way, yeah, it wasn't supported as well as a lot of other stuff, but it did last longer here. I think it just had a little bit more air to breathe, I think.
Well, maybe that's it then. I mean, obviously that's something that I can never really have a hand in experiencing, because obviously I'm hearing it through secondhand stories or what actually people at the time grew up with. But from my understanding of like 80s toy lines and things, sometimes it is a bit, I have to view it through that lens of what was going on here versus what was going on in America, because they all kind of bleed together sometimes, and I shouldn't look at it that way.
Yeah, because it's different, isn't it? Yeah,
very different.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's just a huge shame it was so short-lived, because it was an amazing toy line and very unique, like with a really great kind of play pattern and like interactivity between the toys. I'm really enjoying rediscovering it, and I took the most of this stuff along to the pub with me to meet my friends who also collect Transformers, and they were blown away by it, young and old. Like Hannah, who is, I think, 28, 29, she thought it was fantastic. Really into it. And then Mike, who I mentioned earlier, who's writing that book, he was like so excited to see a Star Wolf and play with it. Like, it's just a really, really well put together line. And, you got the Magnalock power deploy stuff, complements each other so perfectly. Like it all works together. It's not like 2 weird gimmicks that don't fit together. They fit together really well. And yeah, the way that everything compacts and fits inside each other, and it's just a great line.
It's quite interesting how like there's not, maybe you experience some of it now because of some of the stuff might be wearing out or as time goes on. But I mean, like, it doesn't, from what I've seen, there doesn't seem to be much compromises because of those gimmicks either. Like, there's not like a real big drawback that this thing has to fit this other thing in it, or like wherever the gears or the mechanic bits of it have to fit in. It doesn't seem like it's a hindrance to the toy line as well. Like
which you see in other toy lines a lot.
A lot of.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's all really complementary. Yeah, like, I mean, apart from maybe the little plastic visors on the guys get lost immediately.
Okay.
That's not a great idea because they just pop off.
And the hose are the things that people always lose. The hose and the things they come with.
Yeah, the hoses that went from the guns to the backpacks. Yeah, they're easy to lose as well. And that the little wing tips on this come off easily, and you can easily lose that. But generally, no, it's just a really well put together line, and it's really collectible because there's only a certain amount of it, and there will never be any more because Hasbro won't do it. So it's lovely. Yeah. It's great. There we go. Anything more you'd like to say about Starcom?
Okay, so I was thinking about this, and I didn't have a look actually, but there's something I was going to ask you. Like, what if they made a game of it? Do you think it would that work?
What, do you mean like a computer game, video game?
Like a modern computer game with this type of thing going on? Maybe more like what's the game that you like playing? XCOM type of thing, where it's more.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I always thought that XCOM would make a good toy line.
Yeah.
Like, they could make XCOM toys. But yeah, I don't see why not. But I just don't know. I just don't know if the world is ready for kind of utilitarian sci-fi vehicles anymore. I don't know if they're really into it.
Well, that's why I bring up XCOM, because it's more of a strategy type game versus blasting, shooting them up type stuff. Like, it's more would fit more into the science of it.
Well, there are there are games that are similar.
Oh yeah,
to this.
that does definitely exist. But I just mean whacking that Starcom label on it. I think that would that work?
I suppose in a way though, the brand no longer has any pull because no one remembers it.
I guess so. Yeah.
So like maybe it's not worth it.
It's not worth paying Hasbro for the license.
No, I mean, okay, maybe one day Hasbro will revisit it, but I find it unlikely. We'll see. All right. Anything else, or have we done Starcom?
I guess the question that I would have for you now as a vintage collector looking back at the line, is there any, like we were talking about before, about the color schemes and things, are you tempted to go and like customize any of them?
Customize, no, but I have bought repro stickers for them.
Okay.
To like spruce them up, and I mean, if I needed to repair one, I would repair it. You know what I mean? I did have to repair the gun on the Star Wolf because the little pegs that hold them in, you probably can't see them too well, but they're really, really fragile, and the peg has bust on this one. Okay. So I had to put a little bit of super glue underneath it to make it stay in. But yeah, I mean, I would maybe repair them or put new stickers on. I don't know if I'd ever want to go as far as to get into all that kind of like reversing yellowing kind of business, because that's a lot. But I do find that kind of thing interesting. I do like the idea of doing what do you call them, restorations on these things. Yeah. I do find that interesting, and I do find people who do that interesting, and that's the effect what people are able to do. Quite subtly.
I only ask you because I know that you've got that type of artistic skills and your painting and your, the stuff that you do.
I suppose I did think about repainting a bit of it the other day, but I didn't need to in the end. I found a really good guy who's been kind of selling me this stuff, and one of the wings from the Star Max bomber, it was rusty, and I said, I couldn't see that in the photos, and I know you've got a load of them, so do you mind sending me another one? And he was like, oh yeah, I will do, and he did. It was just great.
Oh, there you go.
But I was thinking I could repaint that white. But yeah, I mean, here and there, if I need to, I will do a bit of touching up. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, cool. Well, I mean, because I would be very, very tempted, because I mean, the shadow bats look amazing as they are, but I mean, I don't know.
Well, next time I see you in person, I will bring along a few for you to have a play with.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Absolutely, and by then I might have some Shadow Force. So.
That's the money ones for me. I would love that. If Hasbro's going to bring it back, I'll at least do them. Don't worry about Starcom.
Yeah.
My optics!
Okay, that was our guide to the much underrated toy line and deservedly underrated cartoon Starcom. Sadly forgotten by time, and therefore thankfully not enjoying the unwanted attention of endless nostalgia cash-ins. Yay! Do you remember Starcom, or is it all new to you? What do you think of it? Why not let us know on social media? Search for us on all of them. You should be able to find us easily enough. You can find me in particular on Twitter and Instagram. I am at Ghia Orion and Orion_Ghia respectively. Virtual Dave, where can our listeners send their fan mail to?
You can always find me on Instagram or Twitter at VirtualDave26.
Great. Just to say, we might be back for our customary end of year podcast, maybe. But the loose monthly schedule of AARGH My Optics is likely to slip a bit over the coming months as Dave and I put it on the back burner and to explore other projects.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that means Galactosh and myself launching a new comics-based podcast called We've Got Back Issues in the new year. So look out for that. Dave has been characteristically vague about his future plans. Anything you can tease, Dave?
Subscribe to me on YouTube. More is coming.
Okay. All right. What is your YouTube handle?
VirtualDave26.
There we go. So you need to give that information out if you want people to subscribe.
If anyone knows, that's me. If you find Virtual Dave 26, it's me.
Well, there you go. There you go. But don't worry. The two of us will definitely be getting back together for the occasional AARGH My Optics. And we still need to finish off the Unicron trilogy that we started, don't we?
We do indeed. Don't worry, our planets are in danger. We'll do it.
Oh, God help me. What have I done? Well, with that bombshell, we're going to sign off. As per usual, don't forget that if you enjoyed this podcast, you can let us know by liking, subscribing, sharing, reviewing. We really appreciate it. Mm-hmm. Thanks for listening, and please join us next time on AARGH Optics!